Julius Caesar was one of the most powerful men who ever lived. He conquered France. He crossed the Rubicon. He got stabbed 23 times in a Senate meeting and became more famous for that than anything else he ever did. He also personally stored a large reserve of contraceptive plants in the Roman treasury as a financial asset. Not gold, not silver, contraceptives. And when he needed emergency cash to fund his civil war in 49 BC, the first thing he raided was the plant stockpile. Because in Rome, contraception wasn't fringe, wasn't underground, wasn't whispered about in dark corners. It was so normal, so valuable, so integrated into daily Roman life that Julius Caesar kept it next to the treasury silver. Wait, the treasury thing is real? It's real. And Nero will get there. We'll get there. This is the story of how the most powerful civilization in Western history handled the question of not wanting to get pregnant. Some of what they used was confirmed effective by modern pharmacology. Some of it worked so well, the whole world ate it into extinction. And some of it involved weasel organs. We'll cover all three. Speed running through the social context because we have serious pharmacology to get to, and I assume we both have things to do today. Rome's official position on reproduction. More babies. Always more babies. The empire ran on soldiers, citizens, and tax revenue. Augustus Caesar, first emperor of Rome, man who had personally seduced the wives of several political rivals while lecturing everyone else about family values. Bold of him, passed actual laws fining Romans for not having children. Bachelors, taxed. Childless married couples, taxed. Widows, you have 12 months to remarry before we start taxing you. He called it moral restoration. Romans called it the thing Augustus did that made everyone very annoyed at Augustus, which was already a very long list. I am simply concerned about the birth rate. This has nothing to do with legacy or ego. I am a selfless public servant. Augustus. Definitely. So the official position was reproduce. Patriotically. For home. Speed running through the groups who had different plans. Slave women. No reproductive autonomy. Any child they had was the legal property of the owner. Methods obtained covertly. Under conditions more dangerous and more limited than anything available to free women. Sex workers. Legally registered. Taxed. Licensed. Operating out of establishments that appeared on official city maps. Because Romans were nothing if not organized about their vices. Pregnancy was a business closure. Their practical knowledge was almost certainly more refined than anything written down. Because it was tested constantly and passed directly between women. Their clinical trial was called life. Free married women who had 3 children already, or survived 2 dangerous labors and weren't interested in a third, or whose husbands had just died and left them running an estate. They also had reasons. Contraception was not underground. Physicians wrote entire books about it, openly, with citations. The early methods were to be charitable, ambitious. The oldest documented approach, magic. Wear iron next to your body. Carry a specific stone. Spit 3 times after sex. Recite the words at the correct time. The Roman birth rate remained consistently robust throughout this entire period, which tells you everything you need to know. I followed all the steps, and now I have 3 sons. Please advise. Unnamed Roman woman. Probably. There was also the timing method, the ancient rhythm method based on a theory of fertile windows that got the biology exactly backwards. Using the correct modern rhythm method has a 25% failure rate with accurate knowledge. Using the Roman version was like using Google Maps with all the roads drawn on the wrong side of the city. So Rome's early approach to not getting pregnant was wish really hard, carry a rock, and aim for the wrong days. Accurate, which is why the actual doctor showing up was kind of important. Roman medicine existed in two modes simultaneously, the empirical and the completely unhinged. The best physicians observed outcomes, recorded results, and reasoned from evidence. A scientific impulse, even when the conclusions occasionally included also sneeze. The worst Roman physicians copied each other's mistakes, added new ones for variety, and occasionally invented symptoms they found interesting. In contraception specifically, Roman medicine actually got some things right. Not because they had a theory of sperm and implantation, they didn't. Not exactly, but because generations of women had noticed what worked, and the knowledge accumulated over centuries. The herbal methods first, wild carrot, Daucus carota, one of the most consistently recommended methods across Greek and Roman medicine. Take the seeds after unprotected sex. The modern name is Queen Anne's lace, and it grows in roadside ditches from Maine to Georgia like it has absolutely no idea what it was once used for. A Taylor Swift album title that is secretly ancient contraception. Noted, continue. In the 1990s, University of North Carolina researchers tested wild carrot seeds against progesterone activity. The seeds contain compounds that bind competitively to progesterone receptors and interfere with implantation. Biological activity. Real. The Romans recommended the right plant without knowing why it worked. The plant worked anyway. Pomegranate rind, taken internally or formed into pessaries, contains phytoestrogens, plant compounds structurally similar to human estrogen. Disrupts normal reproductive cycling. The Egyptians used it. The Romans used it. Neither knew what estrogen was. Both observed the results and kept going. Artemisia, the family, including wormwood and mugwort, appears in contraceptive recipes across multiple ancient cultures, independently, with no contact between them, which means either they all arrived at the same conclusion through separate observation, or there was some kind of ancient group chat that historians haven't located yet. The ancient world's pharmaceutical clinical trial ran for approximately 1,000 years without publishing a single paper. Correct. Peer review was not invented yet. Neither was the IRB. Neither was liability. It was a different time than the barrier methods. Roman physicians recommended pessaries, materials inserted vaginally before sex, to create a physical and chemical barrier. Base ingredient, oil. Active ingredient, cedar resin, alum, pomegranate pulp, or some combination. Cedar resin, documented spermicidal properties. Confirmed by modern analysis. Alum potassium aluminum sulfate dramatically alters vaginal pH in ways hostile to sperm motility. Also confirmed, olive oil alone, mechanical barrier and slight pH shift. Also works. Okay, this is actually impressive. Ancient Rome was doing spermicide. Accidentally. But yes, this is chemistry. Imprecisa, nowhere near modern standards. Empirically derived, without a theory to support it, but actual chemistry. Not wishes, not rocks. Now enter Soranus of Ephesus. Soranus was a Greek physician practicing in Rome around 100 AD. He wrote 4 volumes on women's medicine called Gynikeia, the most comprehensive gynecological text to survive from the ancient world. It covers menstruation, childbirth, infant carre, and, at considerable length, contraception. He was doing something genuinely radical for 120 AD. He was distinguishing between contraceptives preventing pregnancy and abortifacients terminating early pregnancy, and arguing explicitly that contraceptives were medically preferable because they were safer for the woman. He ranked his methods by evidence. He criticized the ones with no documented effect. He told his readers in the clearest language available to him, do not use amulets. I am a physician. I have been practicing for 20 years. I have read everything. I am asking you, from the bottom of my professional soul, to put down the iron amulet and use the cedar resin. I am begging you. Soranus. Every single day of his career, he recommended wool pessaries soaked in astringent solutions placed against the cervix. Oil applied before sex. Specific post-sex movements: jumping, crouching, sneezing based on a mechanical theory about preventing semen retention. The sneezing didn't work the way he thought. The oil barrier did. He was the ancient world's first evidence-based gynecologist, and he was practicing in a civilization that also believed the uterus could occasionally wander around the body. Rome contained multitudes. It did, but Soranus wasn't working with the most powerful tool available to him. That tool belonged to a plant from the city of Cyrene, and in the years he was practicing medicine, it was almost gone. The plant was called Silphium. It grew in exactly one place on Earth, the coastal plateau of Cyrenaica, in what is now northeastern Libya. Every attempt to grow it elsewhere failed. The soil, the climate, some specific combination of conditions that existed nowhere else. Silphium required all of it. You couldn't farm it. You could only find it, cut it, and sell it. For 6 centuries, it was one of the most valuable commodities in the Mediterranean world. The coins of Cyrene bore its image. Julius Caesar kept it in the treasury alongside silver. Roman gourmets paid fortunes for its flavor. Physicians across the known world documented its properties. Women used it the sap, the stalk, the root reliably, as a contraceptive. For as long as anyone could remember, weight the heart shape on those coins. Is the heart symbol actually a contraceptive plant seed pod? 6 centuries of pharmaceutical branding. I need a moment. Take your time. By Soranus's era, what reached Rome was almost always fake. The Cyrenian pastoral land had been overgrazed for generations. The wild plant was being cut faster than it could regenerate. Demand from every corner of a vast empire had permanently outpaced supply. The story of how Silphium finally disappeared was recorded by one man. And what it means that he was the one watching is the part of this story I haven't been able to stop thinking about since I first read it. Gaius Plinius Secundus Pliny the Elder was 56 years old when he wrote the passage about Silphium. He had spent 30 years building what would become the Natural History, 37 volumes cataloging everything the Roman world knew about astronomy, geography, medicine, botany, and the natural world. He interviewed hundreds of sources. He read every text he could obtain. His method, by his own description, was to write during every available moment at dinner, in the bath, in the litter moving through Rome, wherever silence could be stolen from the day. He was, by practice and temperament, a man who believed the purpose of scholarship was to record what existed before it ceased to. He understood, when he reached Silphium, that he was writing about something that was ceasing to exist. The plant had been celebrated for 6 centuries. Cyrene had built its economy on it. Its heart-shaped seed pod appeared on the city's coins because that was simply what Cyrene was, the place where Silphium grew. Roman kitchens used it as a flavor unlike anything else in the world. Julius Caesar had stored it in the treasury alongside gold and silver as a financial reserve because it was worth that much. Physicians across the Mediterranean documented its properties. Women had used it for contraception for as long as anyone could remember. It had been a permanent feature of the world Pliny had always known. By the time he was writing, it was essentially gone. He described what had happened carefully. The Cyrenian fields had been overgrazed. The pastoral land degraded over generations of overuse. What reached Rome was almost always adulterated inferior plants, sold as Silphium by merchants who knew the genuine article was no longer available. He noted that a single stalk had recently been found, the last confirmed specimen. The people who found it did what you do with a rarity of that magnitude. They sent it to the emperor. Pliny records only that the stalk was sent as a curiosity to the Emperor Nero. Some later accounts say Nero ate it and found it unremarkable. Pliny himself doesn't say. He just records that it was sent and then moves on to the next entry, which is somehow worse. Pliny wrote it down. He moved on to the next entry. What strikes me, reading this passage across 2,000 years, is what Pliny did not do. He did not call for intervention. He did not propose preservation measures or appeal to the Senate. He was a man of extraordinary intellectual range. He would die. Famously, 7 years later at Pompeii, sailing toward the eruption of Vesuvius to observe it up close, because that was simply who he was, and he watched a plant go extinct, and his response was to document it accurately and continue. Perhaps there was nothing to be done. Perhaps he understood that the machinery that had consumed Silphium, the relentless demand from every corner of a vast empire, the centuries of extraction that could not be reversed, was too large to stop with a paragraph in a natural history. Perhaps the work of the scholar, in the face of irreversible loss, is only to bear witness what Silphium was, in the end, was a mirror. It reflected back everything the Roman world wanted and consumed, and could not stop consuming, right until there was nothing left. The most effective plant-based contraceptive the ancient world ever found was not destroyed by war or plague or policy failure. It was destroyed by appetite, by the ordinary, continuous, distributed appetite of a civilization that wanted it, could pay for it, and never thought to ask whether the supply had a limit. Pliny wrote it down. He moved on. The world where Silphium existed ended quietly, between 2 entries in a book that most people have never read. I have been sitting with that Pliny section for about a week. I read his natural history entry on Silphium 11 times, trying to figure out if he understood what he was watching happen. I still don't know. I'm going to take a minute to thank a sponsor who, unlike Silphium, will still be here tomorrow. Unlike Silphium, because it's gone. I've said that several times now. Let's continue. Silphium is gone. The most effective option Rome had is gone. What did they do? They improvised. Aggressively. Speed running through the replacement methods because several of them are best understood quickly. Before you have time to formulate follow-up questions. The weasel testicles approach. Ancient source. Actual ancient source. Not me being creative recommended that a woman wear the testicles of a weasel as an amulet around her neck. The theoretical basis involves some concept of transferred properties, the logic of which has not survived into the modern era. Effectiveness. No data exists because nobody in the history of controlled clinical trials has tested this. Comfort level. The weasels was certainly worse. This is not a Skyrim mod. This was the Roman healthcare system, the mule earwax option. Yes. Applied the ancient texts, becomes suddenly very shy about times where it was applied. Which is notable given how explicit they are about literally everything else. This appears in multiple independent sources, meaning either someone tried it and reported results, or one author wrote it down and the rest of ancient medicine did what ancient medicine loved to do, copy each other's entries without checking. The ancient world invented citation without inventing peer review. A bold choice. The jumping protocol. After sex. Jump up and down 7 times. Some sources say backward. This does not work. What it does reveal is that Roman physicians had a mechanical model of conception they were applying physics to biology. The physics was wrong. The instinct to think mechanically was, accidentally, in the right direction. The cold water intervention. Drink cold water immediately after sex. Theory. Cool the reproductive system. Efficacy. Nil. Hydration value. Marginal. At least something is being done. At least the asparagus seed method. Now, this one is actually interesting. Asparagus seeds taken orally appear in multiple contraceptive lists. Unlike the weasel testicles, this has been analyzed. Asparagus contains compounds with documented endocrine effects, the same pharmacological category as wild carrot seeds. This method might have done something real. The ancient clinical trial was a woman took it and then didn't become pregnant, which is a sample size and methodology that modern science would describe as not quite peer-reviewable. Pliny the Elder documented essentially every method anyone had ever tried, without consistently distinguishing this works from a shepherd told me this works. His contraception sections read like a medical encyclopedia edited by everyone who has ever had an opinion. Organized not by evidence, but by how interesting Pliny personally found each entry. Wikipedia was invented in ancient Rome. This is historically accurate. The professional debate was fierce and ongoing. Soranus. Empirical methods only. Skip the magic. Document your results. His contemporary Aspasia documented a broader herbal range, Dioscorides, whose De Materia Medica was the ancient world's most comprehensive drug encyclopedia. Listed plant after plant with reproductive effects, some confirmed by modern pharmacology. Some still untested. Some probably just vibes. They were all working around the same central problem. The thing that had anchored the entire system was gone. Without Silphium, practitioners sorted through a toolkit that ranged from genuinely spermicidal to mechanically plausible to this involves a weasel with limited ability to tell them apart. The women using these methods didn't have the luxury of waiting for clinical trials. They used what was available, combined methods when they could, passed knowledge between themselves through networks that left no written record. The physicians wrote books. The women had conversations that history did not preserve. That's actually not funny at all. No, it's not. The decline of Roman contraceptive knowledge didn't happen because the methods stopped working. Cedar resin didn't lose its spermicidal properties when Rome fell. Wild carrot seeds didn't stop affecting implantation when Constantine legalized Christianity. The pharmacology was unchanged. What changed was whether women were allowed to use it. As Christianity spread through the empire and became its official religion, it introduced a theological framework for reproduction that had no real precedent in classical Roman culture. Sex was for procreation. Preventing conception was interference with divine will. And the women who had maintained this medical tradition for centuries were now under the new framework, doing something called sin. Augustine of Hippo, writing in the early 5th century, condemned contraception as gravely sinful sex without the intent to procreate was, in his framing, a fundamental violation of the purpose of marriage. John Chrysostom went further. He called contraception murder before conception. Thomas Aquinas, several centuries later, would rank it as the sin that appears to take next place after homicide. Jerome, Clement of Alexandria, the entire patristic tradition, they all moved in the same direction. The details varied. The conclusion did not. What these women are doing is, let's go with murder adjacent. We're calling it murder adjacent. The early church, broadly, 3rd through 5th century AD, filed under arguments that aged in very specific ways. This is the structural irony buried in this story, and it deserves to be said clearly. The Romans were regularly accused by early Christian writers of moral degeneracy. Their sexual culture, the bathhouse murals, the explicit poetry, the complete lack of embarrassment was cited as evidence of civilizational collapse. But the civilization being called morally degenerate had, in one specific domain, been doing careful empirical work for centuries. Soranus explicitly telling his patients to skip the magic and use the method with documented effects. Generations of women observing that certain plants produced certain outcomes and passing that knowledge forward. A pharmacopoeia that modern researchers are still mining for pharmaceutical leads. The civilization labeled morally degenerate was doing science. The civilization that replaced it, in the name of moral restoration, suppressed that science for 1,000 years. I came into this video to make jokes about Roman contraception methods. I know, I did not expect to end up here. Nobody ever does with Rome. That's the thing about this civilization. You think you're studying the weasel testicles, and then suddenly you're looking at something that tells you something true about how knowledge gets made and how it gets lost and who pays for that loss. And then you're back to the weasel testicles. And then you're back to the weasel testicles. And then you're back to the weasel testicles. Not all of it was suppressed immediately. Knowledge is stubborn. Midwives and herbalists across medieval Europe continued using plants with reproductive effects. Artemisia for bringing on a delayed cycle. Wild carrot for women's complaints. Language carefully chosen to describe practices that everyone understood, but that couldn't be openly named. The plants still grew. The knowledge survived underground. in the spaces between what could be said and what was done. But the systematic tradition Soranus Ginaikea, Dioscorides de Materia Medica, the network of physicians building on each other's evidence, broke. The texts were preserved in monastery libraries, copied by monks who didn't always understand what they were preserving. The knowledge became inaccessible to the women who needed it most. John Riddle, a historian at North Carolina State University, spent much of his career arguing that ancient herbal contraceptives actually worked, and that their suppression represents one of the largest losses of practical medical knowledge in Western history. His 1997 book, Eve's Herbs, laid out the pharmacological evidence and argued that medieval demographic data actually reflects the knowledge gap. Fertility patterns measurably change when the methods disappear. The basic pharmacological point is hard to argue with. Some of the plants the Romans used have real biological effects. Some of the mechanisms Soranus described are real mechanisms. The women of ancient Rome were not imagining things. They were doing chemistry, without knowing it was chemistry. And then history decided they shouldn't be doing it at all. Here's where things stand now. Modern pharmacological research has confirmed biological activity in wild carrot seeds, pomegranate, multiple artemisia species, and several other plants from the ancient contraceptive literature. The journal Contraception has published research on Queen Anne's lace. The World Health Organization has funded plant-based contraceptive research using ancient medical texts as a starting point. Some of Soranus's recommendations: the oil barrier, the alum pessary, the wool cervical block, are not insane by modern standards, less effective than modern options. But consider the distance traveled, from iron amulets and wrong direction rhythm methods to genuine spermicidal chemistry, arrived at through nothing but observation, failure, and the kind of knowledge that gets passed between women in rooms that history did not record. The weasel testicles, for what it's worth, have not received WHO funding. A real missed opportunity.